Welcome to the Trails Committee meeting tonight, July 18th. I am calling the meeting to order at 7:32. Let's do a roll call. When I call your name, let me know you're here. Satyendra Sharma.
Here.
Tom McCoolier.
Here.
Will Warren.
Here.
Pat McKee here. Great, thank you all. So welcome Travis Farley. He is the new Southborough Recreation Director. And he's joining us to make introductions. And I thought we could just, he could give a little bit about a background about him. And then each of you could maybe talk a little bit about maybe how long you've been on the committee and why you love the Trails Committee. No. So Travis.
Oh, no. Thank you for the intro. Yeah, no, I'm in week 3 of the job. So still drinking from a fire hose a little bit, but everybody in the community has been outstanding. The community's been great. A lot of the departments have been great. Kat's taking an hour of free time to go over some of the projects you guys are doing. And I think it's fabulous how active and how much you're doing for the community. It's outstanding. A little bit about me. I was the recreation director at Natick for the last 2 years. And before that, I was the recreation director for the town of Norwood for the last 9. And just always been involved. I grew up a rec kid. My dad was the rec director of the town I grew up in. So I've kind of always grew up lining fields and taking registrations and be involved in the rec side of things. So I'm excited to be here and excited to start. And I'm excited to learn more about some of the projects that you guys are doing and supporting you guys in a really good way. And been involved with the Massachusetts Recreation and Park Association for the last 15 years. I just wrapped up my term as president of the Mass Rec and Park Association last year, a 4-year term. So it's just pretty involved with the rec side. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting involved and and learning more about what the trails are like in Southborough.
You can see one right behind me. This is the 9/11 loop.
Yeah, we live in Groton, and they have a fabulous network of trails. And that actually, oddly enough, is what got us through COVID, was all the trails. I've got 3 kids, 9, 6, and 2. So during COVID, we did trails. That's what we did. So I have a very healthy and I've got a very good appreciation of what trails mean to a community.
Great. Okay. So Sati, why don't you go? I think you're the next oldest or longest serving on the committee.
You're like a fine wine.
So thank you, Kat. So I joined along with Kat and Catherine in 2017.
Wow.
In 2016 I got my citizenship, and that's how I got an invitation from the recreation committee that you should now contribute to the. I've been contributing in different ways, but I was asked to contribute to the town now. So then I joined Trails Committee. Why I like Trails Committee? Because while growing up in India, my father used to take us every Sunday. We didn't have like weekends. The weekend only was Sunday. It's not like so to a hilly place in my town in Western India, and that was, I mean, he used to show us different plants, and it was a desert like Arizona, so it was Western Rajasthan. So he used to teach us about the flora and fauna around. He was a professor of philosophy, but he was interested in these kind of things. So that is how it grew on me. And so I thought that it was a good opportunity to continue this kind of activity while contributing to the town.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and
nice to meet you.
Yeah, Sati also serves as our clerk. Thank you, Sati.
Nice.
Yeah. So Tom, I think you're next longest serving.
Yeah, I think I've been on it for 3 years. So I'm redoing my subscription, my committee membership. Sati, it takes it to a whole level. My level is really low level. So I got involved with the trails in Southborough because I have dogs.
Because you have dogs?
Because I have dogs. So dogs love to go into the woods. I know that there's some trails that dogs are prohibited, but I also know all the trails that the dogs are allowed on. So my interest came really because I have dogs. They have to be exercised. They love going romping around in the woods. So I know Sati takes it to a whole different level, way up here. Mine's more, I have the dogs. We enjoy going into the woods. We enjoy hiking. So it's really just the enjoy of the outdoors. And what really brought me in is because of my dogs.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
you look at it from that lens, which is great.
Just
I'm
a word.
a dog fan myself.
Just a word for Tom, because he joined. I met him for the first time when he joined a live talk by Catherine in front of the town, and he wholeheartedly listened to it, and then came downstairs and met with me, and then he asked me what I mean about the trails and everything, and I couldn't answer him, So
Yeah, so I did
that's
attend that
how.
meeting. I do remember that, Sati, specifically. So it was at town hall, it was a selectman meeting
Yeah.
and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna latch on to him. Which trails that can I go to?
Awesome. Tom also serves as our vice chair.
Great.
So next, last but not least, Will Warren.
Yes, I joined the Trails Committee 2 years ago, I guess, at this point. And the reason I was very interested in joining is that, I believe that the trails in Southborough are just a tremendous resource for the entire community. And I'm delighted to be on the Trails Committee because, it actually does some very concrete things in terms of creating new trails and also maintaining and promoting the trails that we have. So I actually was on a hike this morning, not in Southborough, but with the Southborough Senior Center Trailblazers. We were out at the Wachusett Reservoir, but
Nice.
it's great exercise, and Southborough has some very beautiful trails, and I'm very proud to help with that.
That's fantastic.
Great. Thank you all. So Travis, you're welcome to join us. If you have any specific questions that we can answer now that have kind of been percolating in your head since we talked the other day, certainly feel free to ask them. And I know you want to meet next week to talk a little bit about the projects in more detail, and I can send you some time that we can do that offline.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think I've got a pretty good understanding of the budget side and the buckets. I think it's fabulous how active your Trails Committee is. I think it's great to see all the improvements that you're working on, and I'd love to see how Tim supported you and how I can continue to do that on the rec side in whatever way, shape, or form I can.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for letting me carving out some time and then letting me introduce myself. Yeah, I'm going to go back to lacrosse practice, but I wanted to hop on and introduce myself and say hello.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, very good. Very glad we have a rec director or not.
Where does he come from? What was his?
He was in Natick for 2 years as the rec director, and before that Norwood for 9 years, and also served on the Massachusetts Recreation Park Association for 4 years as a president.
So
Or
he's
may
got
have been on it for longer, but as a president, it was 4 years.
he's got deep contacts then into everything.
Yes, he has lots of experience with municipal projects, with state project, capital projects, with CPA funds. So he knows a lot of stuff. So he's going to be as resourceful as Tim was for us. He'll be very helpful.
And
Tom,
he
you
lives in the town of Grafton, right? Is that what he said?
he said Groton was a neighbor. I think
Groton.
it was
Groton.
in Groton that he either lives or is nearby because he
Okay.
used the tree. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, fabulous, and glad that we have somebody now. Okay.
Mm.
So next up is approval of the minutes. So I sent the minutes out the same night because Sati sent them to me. So that was a record turnaround time for me, not for Sati. Sati's always on time. I got them out the same night. So I hope you guys have had an opportunity to review the minutes. Do you want me to pull them up, or does anyone have any feedback or questions on those? Okay.
I move that we pass the minutes or approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Great. Sati, I didn't send you the agenda in Word. Do you need it?
No, what I do nowadays
Can you
is to
convert the PDF?
old previous minutes and then repurpose them.
Yeah. If you have Adobe Acrobat, you can convert PDF to Words. So but I don't know if you have that or the reader. So, okay. So that was a motion. Someone seconded.
I did.
Tom did.
Thank you, Tom. So all in favor, let's do roll call. Satya Sharma,
Yes.
Tom McCoolier,
Yes.
Will Warren,
Yes.
Pat McKee, yes. Motion passes. Thank you all. Okay, great. Next, Peninsula 1, Phase 1. This is the one we want to track time on, Sati. So Mass Trails Grant Project Update Signage and Grant Reports. So I don't think, so we're talking about signage. So I guess we can go ahead and talk about that. So I sent over a document along with the minutes that has some information we might be interested in on the Sudbury Reservoir building of it. I'm trying to grab my notes so I can take notes. Yeah, so the brainstorm. So the very first, I can share screen, so we're all looking at the same stuff. Okay. Can you see a map?
Yes. Mhm.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so with our initial quote we had for the signage, we basically planned, I can't tell if I planned for two map kiosks or one, but if we have enough budget, we should do two, even if one is minor and one is major, like meaning a smaller version and a larger version, if we can fund it. We'll want to have it the location. I'm going to scroll down a little bit where, can you see my cursor okay?
Yes.
Okay, that's Route 30 and Central Street, so we would have a trailhead kiosk there. And then one over here on, it depends on where we put it, right? So it won't go on MWA property necessarily. It may be able to, if we do get approval for a crosswalk and parking, we might want to be able to, if we have an option to put the signage at the parking on that strip of land. It is TBD, to be determined. And if not, then we'll find a good place, maybe, right as the trail enters into the forest along the wetlands there, maybe we put something like that. So, and a small directional to point. So TBD on that. And so the map kiosk will be basically the map. We can have a smaller version, a blown up version of this, and maybe I'd like your feedback on whether we want something larger scale, or maybe we just link to larger scale because we'll have space considerations of the Bay Circuit Trail. I mean, no, the Burroughs Loop, like the whole area, right? Do we want to represent the whole area, or do we just want to focus on this is the trail segment and the surrounding connections? To learn more, use this QR code and you'll be linked to the BLT, the Burroughs Loop site. They already have an interactive map and things like that. So that might be something. Do you guys have any thoughts on?
I like the idea about just the local trails, then the QR for the whole, like you said, Bay Circuit Trail. I like that idea.
Yeah, because one thing we're going to have is if you picture a map board, it's going to have whether it's one side flat or angled at a trifold sort of thing. It's TBD on that. But we'll have a map, but then we're going to have, we'll have a section of the board that may be blank for seasonal postings. For example, when it's hunting season, that posting can go there. So we'll want to take it down and put it up. So we'll have like a blank area, but then we'll also have some text, right? Maybe, for the text, since we're going to be doing an interpretive signing along the trail at special points, we can maybe talk about the high level, like along this trail, you may find that the following information, and do like bullet point on the topics that are going to be talked on the trail, something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, and then we'll have rules and regs. The rules and regs might be one of those replaceable signs though, right? Because those things may change from time to time. So I don't want to put something so permanent.
You see them all around the rules and reg ones at the DCR stuff.
Yeah, they're very good about putting those up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll be careful about what gets permanent text. So I think the permanent text would be stuff like that's not going to change. You know, talking about history and ecology, or that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that, and then I guess, so it's the first accessible trail, right? So that's going to be highlighted in Southborough, right? We want to say something about that. And then I think what we'd like to do, you tell me if I'm, what other ideas you have is, but to add the what accessible features does this trail offer? Right. So we wanted to, and we'll talk about this when we get into signage more, but some accessible features like, we've got QR codes to go to audio from a website that's hosted on a website, right? So for people who are visually impaired, they will be able to access an audio narration of the sign, right? So there may be other things. I'm not quite sure how to fill this out yet, because we don't know exactly all the features that we're going to have. And I'm going to rely on you a little bit. And I forget if I made this assignment last time, but to help us research different ways to make the trail accessible, or to plan for it to be accessible. If there's a phase 2, for example, how do we set up the foundation to allow us to do, if we can't do it all now, what would we like to do later? Like, of course, the signs, their height and those types of things will all be accessible. So a wheelchair, for example, can go up to a sign and read it. But what other options are there? We talked about sensory option, like sensory challenges. How do you make a trail more sensitive to sensory challenges? And some of the reading and information I included was tactile sign, signs you can touch, you can feel. And I really liked that idea if we have a sign of sorts about the types of trees or in the area, and you can actually feel the bark, make it sort of like where you can feel it. So what kind of things can we do along those lines that would help? So I think we can just think of a few ways of
one question on the QR code for audio narration. So how the QR code will be accessible to visually impaired?
It's a good point. So it depends on the visual impairment, right? Because if in some way they either are with someone when they're on the trail, right? Or they're partially impaired because they got to the trail without somebody, right? Because they're going to have to get to the trail. So one way or the other, it may not be completely compatible with someone with no vision, right? Because so Braille and those types of things are probably out of our budget. But are there ways that we can assist? And Will, maybe you can speak a little bit to any of your experience that you've had on the trails that may have given you some ideas that we might be able to incorporate here based on your experiences.
I can't bring up any right at the moment. However, I would ask one question, and that is that, we have a portion of the trail that's accessible for those with mobility impairment, right? But there's also other sections of the trail that would be accessible to people with visual impairments, not necessarily with mobility impairments. So when I'm thinking about accessibility enhancements, I think I'm going to think about the entire trail, not just the portion that's paved.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right, Will. Yeah. Because even though on the other side where we're doing the natural surface and the boardwalk and remember the boardwalk and the bridge will be ADA, and that which is around it, we're going to try to build the trail as much as possible with as little slope as possible and try to address some of those issues. So, that we're set up for if, there's a phase 3, and we can really get in there and make it a hard packed surface and put stone dust and gravel, and they allow us to do all that, and we really make the whole thing accessible, really, fully accessible, then we want to set the groundwork for that. So that's right, Will. So the signage and things we want to think about. And it may be, if the whole trail, like we've said, the challenges of the slope, we cannot address on some aspects of the trail. But if one end and the other end are accessible, and we get, 0.4 miles and maybe a 0.3 miles, we have 0.7, almost a mile of accessible trail. We're trying to do our best. So yeah, thank you for thinking about the broader.
The other thing that you and I had seen, I think at one of the conferences, or maybe it was an online conference, was workshop where there was a trail where they had put like a guide rope for those who are totally blind. I don't know if that would be feasible for any portion of this trail because of the car traffic that goes across it.
Yep. Yeah,
But,
it's something to consider.
Right. I guess, one other thing, sort of to back up just a little bit, on the map that you're showing there, that focuses on this new portion of the trail that kind of ends at the new bridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It what?
Well, it doesn't end, it continues on.
It continues, and on that end, it continues on to the, to the hill, and on the other side of the reservoir, right? And then on the western side of the reservoir at Route 30 and Central Street, it actually continues if you can get across the causeway without dying.
Yes, it does.
Around to the to other trails. Do we want to show that on the map in the kiosk? Or?
Yeah, I think so, Will. So we'll have something kind of similar to this, where maybe a little scaled out so you see a little bit better. But yeah, so what we want to show is how it connects to the existing trails, like over here, the Sudbury Reservoir Trail /BLT/Aqueduct, and over here to the Bay Circuit Trail, which is also Aqueduct and also BLT. So we do
another thing that does occur to me is that there's a certain number of bird types that are prevalent in these forests right around this trail.
Yep.
And the QR code could perhaps connect people to, here's this bird and here's the song of this bird in case you hear it.
I super love that. So this isn't over here, but no, yes.
Wouldn't that be the QR codes to audio narration of the signs? Oh, the signs.
Yep.
Yeah. But that could be another way. I mean, I don't do too well picking out birds in the forest, but I can certainly hear their song. If I knew, oh well, that's a yellow ruby-throated warbler or whatever, that would be nice.
I like that a lot. And wouldn't it be neat if so, as far as tactile goes, what if we had a part of a sign have, like, because there's deer, there's fox or coyotes, there are snakes, there are all sorts of animals back there. What if one of the signs, I don't know how realistic this is, has the fur of a deer? What does a deer feel like? We never get to touch a deer. What does a snake skin feel like?
Well, the other thing, now this would be something you'd want to get other people involved in, but there's tracks, right? And you can either have a picture of the different tracks of animals, so that somebody looking down on the ground can say, that was a fox track there that I saw. Or you could I don't know exactly how you'd capture it, but you can even have like a 3D tactile thing where you actually can sort of feel the fox tracks or the deer tracks or whatever.
Ooh, I like that.
So that's kind of another wild idea. That would be much more difficult than a picture, but even a picture would be useful for even for sighted people.
Yes.
Because then they could say, oh, there's this thing has run across the trail at this particular juncture.
I really like that. And yes, Good. Thank you. That's perfect. I like the idea of the tracks too, and being able to feel like, we may be out of our scope, like, you start getting 3D signs. I'm sure that's going to be a little expensive. However,
No, that's too expensive, but
it
the
might
other-
not be. It might not be. It might be a down the road thing. We might leave room for it. It might be an add-on or any number of things. So let's keep those ideas flowing.
Right. And then, the other thing is, there's beaver and probably otters that are floating around in the reservoir, right?
We saw some otters once.
Yeah,
I
otters
think
are
they were
there.
otters.
Mhm.
Otters.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we put we put Cat there, just point them out sort of 24/7.
Yeah.
Do you think you could swing that?
What was that? What?
We have you stationed on the trail 24/7 to point out the otters and the beavers.
We can put a trail cam.
A trail
Well-
cam, yep.
I think the trail cam's a really interesting idea, because what we could do is feature like an animal of the month or something if we have and we could just put the trail cam up and see what we get, and then feature that on the website or promote it on Facebook and say, oh, this is what's been walking on the trail this week. I love that idea.
Yeah,
Um,
there's only one potential issue is you don't want to film that predator animal called people, right?
Yeah, you have to let people know that there may be filming or something going on for transparency purposes, for sure. And with
Right,
children
right.
and such, we would have to be careful with that. Yep. But I really like that idea. And also, if we think about it, some of these signs, the way we develop them, we can focus them on, so there's going to be some topical signs, like each one might have a different topic. One's history, one is environment, one is animal-based or plant-based, whatever. And we can build the signs in thinking about programming in the future, right? So
Right.
the history sign will be something when we have our history walks, we can stop and it will be a focal point. Same thing for nature hikes, if we do nature hikes out there. Stopping and looking at the tracks or feeling and being, kind of this being kid focused, if you think about it, could also be, our signage could just be a way we center it just kind of helps us with our future programming, and we'll have a resource to kind of go to.
Right. I mean, this Sudbury Reservoir, after that walk that we had sponsored, I mean, it has a very rich history. So
Yeah. Well, yes, I agree. There's a lot of history, and
There's a
I'm
lot of
very
history.
excited about what we're about to try to do. It's overwhelming to think about how much information, how to really distill it to a very small sign and not make it too populated. But I think what will give me peace is that we can have a website on the back end of that focused on the bigger picture and like have more text. So as much as we want, we can, whatever we don't get on the sign can go on the website, and then we're telling the bigger story, right?
right.
And
I'm kind of wondering do you think there's a possibility of getting some high school kids involved in sort of, researching history or whatever, and developing?
yeah, I think that's a great idea, Will. We might be able to do that for maybe nothing this year, only because of timing, right? The time.
Right. No, I understand. But
yeah, but I like that idea for some other projects that we're going to have coming up that aren't time sensitive. So, we can put some signs around town in different trails and highlight different things. And that might be a really great way of getting the schools involved and the students.
Well, yeah, and also just in some respects, doing projects like that where you are adding, more interpretive signs and things like that can be a way to sort of refresh the trails and get people re-interested in going on the
Yeah.
trails, right?
Yeah. If there's a feature to see, now you should go walk that trail again.
Right. And also, it would be a good way to advertise Southborough as well, right?
Yeah.
If we're adding to or enriching the trails along the way over the years, that would be a good way to advertise Southborough.
Ooh, I wonder, is this even a thing? Could we have a trail sign, an interpretive sign that gets panels swapped out? They slide in, slide out, so we could change the messaging like every couple years, like and build, we would just have like a sign that changes.
I think that definitely is a possibility. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, you know, in some respects, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, there aren't a lot of more spaces to put trails in Southborough, are there?
Right. No, we're about it. We're about
Yeah.
done.
Right.
Okay, great. So, two trailhead map, you know, we talked about that. So then we're gonna have 4 to 6 interpretive signs. And I say 4 to 6 because it depends on cost and it depends on where we're putting them. And we want to do it judiciously because we don't want to pollute the wonderful nature area with signs. So we want to place them thoughtfully, right? So it's still not as a sign here and everywhere. So what I have here in the document is that link to the digital Commonwealth Photo Archive. So there could be some photos in there that we can grab. Also referencing Andy Leahy, who had a wonderful, he's got some great archive, I think, photos that maybe MWR or DCR have that we don't have access to. So we want to reference, we may talk to him about what we want, because the imaging is going to be important for the signs, but also what we don't use, we can put on the website and link to the digital Commonwealth, but also call out some specific ones depending on how we want to lay out the website. And also when I think of the website, like in order to make this happen this year and in a timely manner, that website may evolve and change over time. So what we beta 1, like our phase 1, might just have like some basic minimum, you know, stuff. We want it to be enticing enough that people are interested, that it's not so bare bones that they're like, wait, what? This isn't interesting. But at the same time, we don't have to finish it right on day 1 is what I'm saying, as a way to kind of parse out the responsibilities so that we don't feel overwhelmed by it.
Well, the great thing about adding to the website is that A, you can add a lot of stuff without cluttering the physical trail, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then B, you can add a lot of stuff without having to actually create new signs and
Yes.
physical things, which are difficult and expensive.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so next topic is potential topics for the signs. So let's pretend if we have 4 to 6, let's have at least 6 topics and maybe rank them in the order of our preference in case we can only do 4 signs, right? Does that sound like a possibility to kind of move us forward, right? So the potential topics I had listed here are just some ideas. So the importance of watersheds and their role in protecting water supply, since we are in a watershed that is a backup water supply. I think talking about that is an important piece just to keep people aware. We can focus on why, you know, dogs aren't allowed on the trail. Sorry, Tom. You know, and this is the reason why. So it's kind of an education of that. So we can talk a little bit about that. The building of the Sudbury Dam. Now, I was very interested in what ChatGPT came up with for information. And again, anytime ChatGPT brings up information, we have to vet it. Don't trust it. We need multiple sources to confirm that we're not spreading, you know, misinformation. So I want to qualify that by saying not everything we read may have been correct, but it has a similarity enough to some of the history we've already heard to know some of it's right. So I thought, so building the Sudbury Dam, here's the list, right? And I am of, we've talked about this before. I really like the way honoring the legacy of those who were affected by the dam construction, right? Because apparently there's 140 homes that were moved to build the dam so those people had to relocate for this to happen. So I think, you know, talking about like on a high level about the building of the dam, some important facts and focusing on the people and the impacts on the people is an interesting concept, in addition to the significant engineering feat that it was, right? So there is like a couple of options there to kind of highlight, which I like, you know, personally, I like those two and want to hear from you guys on what you're thinking. I like calling out who were the people working on the dam, right? Irish, Italian, Eastern European immigrants were those who built the dam, and honoring them and their work. And, you know, talking about a little bit about the conditions like it was to work. And it was dangerous, you know, and that kind of thing. So what do you guys think, and how are you feeling about things?
I was going to sort of add to that, just that, I mean, the Sudbury Reservoir was one of the first reservoirs, constructed for this purpose. And, we might also want to highlight sort of, who was behind getting this done, right? And the engineering and things like that.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
So basically, it's a history lesson.
History lesson. Yes. Yep. Because, where else can you, I mean, I think it's, where else do you learn this?
Also, I mean, who did the Sudbury Reservoir serve until it was, replaced? But
Boston. It was built to provide water to Boston. Basically, they kept going west to get more water as the city grew. Yep. So I think a sign, it will probably just be one sign on history, right? And we'll have to choose carefully how because what we just said was a lot, right? How we represent that. Maybe, how we represent it, and then the pictures that we use, we'll need to choose, and then go into the QR code to the website to get more info, to have them get more information. Yeah.
I think that's definitely one of the important things for the signage, this topic.
Is what this topic?
Yep.
Yep.
This whole thing's.
Right.
Are you guys comfortable with the importance of watershed topic 2? So that's sign
Yep.
1.
Yep.
And
It's like the building of it and why it's important.
Yep, sign 2.
But that includes the flora and the fauna, right? That the
No, not necessarily. So the important watershed and the role in protecting water,
okay.
that's a little different. So then to your point, Will, that is another sign we want, right? Sign number 3 will be flora fauna.
Okay.
And, something like that. And this may be opportunity for a tactile.
And also sound and things like that.
Yeah, I think we could do sound in all of it if we can, and there are, I don't think we're talking about, I was looking at some of the options out there, like some have a solar power button you can push on a pedestal that will talk to you. You push it right there in the field. I don't think we're going to have the budget for those types of things, or they have where you can just punch a button, something turns on in the sign. I don't know that we're going to have the money for that type of thing. So what we could do initially is just a QR code that links to an audio narration.
No, that's, which is fine. That's great.
But we'll ask, we'll inquire.
I mean, remember, people have got in their hand or in their pocket, a supercomputer, their phone, right?
Yeah, let's leverage that. Good point.
Yeah.
One thing we could consider, and I don't know how well this will go over, but how you go to a museum, a bigger museum, and they may have like an audio tour, a self-guided tour. You pick up your headphones and then you go through and then you return your headphones. I mean, and maybe not now, but maybe later. Is that, we could have something at the recreation department where people could pick that up if they wanted to. I don't know if it'd be worthwhile. And with this day and age of phones, maybe that's not necessary. But if we think about all the population, maybe phones seem to be like something everyone has, but maybe there are some people that don't. So would the headsets be something, we consider?
But that will need an app. So download an app on the phone, let's say
For a
Southborough
headset.
Trails, and then that needs that would need some volunteers or somebody to develop the app.
But it also could just be a YouTube video that they start and stop themselves, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be an app.
I like that.
I guess, the other thing, as we all move into this super digital age, once again, I wonder if there aren't students or people out there who would like to contribute by creating media, that interact, not necessarily interactive, but media that would be useful in this context.
I like that, Will. And I was thinking of that when we were talking about headsets, apps and things. I was like, well, wouldn't it be nice if we got some students who wanted to develop an app or
just develop the content? I mean, you could
we give them the content and they make it happen, right? Something like that.
Yeah, or they make they make like a YouTube video that takes you through as you walk along the trail. It takes you through the building of the reservoir and the people affected and all of that. And you start and stop it as you go, right? If you don't want to, you don't necessarily have to listen to it continuously. You can sort of start and stop it. So that's kind of thing.
Yeah. I like it. Okay. Yeah. So sign 3, flora, fauna, and then sign number 4. So, and it might be, I wonder if our history gets too big, then we could maybe do 2 history signs, like one on each side or something, and then do, yeah, because what else? We could talk about, so I want to be careful about this topic, and we would vet everything through MWA also, but talk about I don't want to put a map of anything up, that although it's all found on the website, but talk about like the dam itself. Like maybe there's a message, maybe that's reserved for a message that MWA wants to share about water supply, about the facility, about maintaining or something. Like what I want to be careful about, I don't want to provide a map of everything underground.
No, well, I wonder
for security reasons, but what could we do in that world?
I wonder, I don't know, maybe this is a dumb idea, but in building the trail or getting the trail going, we have to interact with all these different groups within the Massachusetts government, the MWRA, the DCR, all of that. And that is not necessarily bad information. That can be very eye-opening for people to understand. Here's exactly how your government actually works, in the sense that you have these different groups that are covering or making sure and cooperating with one another to make sure that this reservoir functions and stays, in good shape and things like that.
Oh, I like it. And how, what, MWA might like this one, how, MWA opened up, it's the aqueduct trail, right? And how they opened up all the aqueducts for trail use, and how, they're like balancing safety or, balancing purpose with recreation. And it might be a nice shout out to MWA that and that they're not just a government agency that has regulations, but they also are trying to work with the communities they're within to share their resources.
Right. And then there's the mass trails, right? And the other thing is if somebody wanders onto the trail, so they're using the trail, it might not be bad to just maybe mention to them, it doesn't have to be lengthy, but here's a whole bunch of other trails in the state or places where you can get more information. And if you like this trail, there's many other trails, that kind of thing.
I love that idea too. And I think that should go up here. Like a link to other trail resources.
Now, and that might be something that we want to coordinate with other trail committees or other bodies in the state. Because to tell you the truth, I mean, somebody should develop boilerplate that everybody can use. So if people wander onto a Massachusetts trail, it's like, this isn't just a one-off, there's all over the state. And
actually a link to, remember a long time ago, not to a few years, central, so we have MAPC and then there's a central MAPC like correspondent, like it's an equal organization for the central, and they were doing an interactive map of all these central trails. So I think to your point, Will, there has been a lot of collaboration and discussion about, these interactive maps and including other communities. So I think you're right, linking to other community resources. And I like that idea.
Well, when we went to that conference in the Wolf Lodge or whatever, there was a biker group that was talking about that kind of thing, about, essentially having something that the bike trails that go all over the state, and making it easy for people to see those and things like that.
Yep.
You know, and so there's all kinds of different resources that extend across the state and make this a great state. I mean, the trails and the bike trails and and also accessibility trails and things like that.
Yeah, and I like that. So for our website too, it's good to have outside connections. So we've connected with some outside links, but we want them to connect to us too. So maybe that's actually a whole initiative
right,
to help boost visibility. So
and then the other thing that we might connect to would be accessibility, or people who are building accessible trails and things like
very
that.
good, very good.
So there's a whole bunch of different movements to
Yes.
To improve the outdoors and accessibility, but also to improve the outdoors for everybody.
Yes, I like it. We should on our website definitely have, as we start to say, hey, accessible trail. By the way, here are all the other accessible trails in town, and I think in Massachusetts, and I think the Mass Audubon has a lovely list of accessible trails that they work on, because they're very good about doing that. Yeah, Tom, did you raise your hand or not on purpose? Can anyone see if there's any visitors?
There's nobody.
No visitors. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone at my front door. I gotta go see what's going on. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
You be back. Okay, great. So I think we have some really good ideas there, sign 4. And so I'm going to put here sign number 2 and maybe number 3. Like, there might be so much history that we want out there that we want 2 historical signs. The reason I say that too is because we've kind of been focused on this side of things, but remember there's we're putting the bridge and boardwalk over here, and that double arch bridge we're going to be looking at. I had planned to put some signage, it doesn't necessarily have to be interpretive sign, but just it could be a plaque sign or a smaller version of a sign, but just highlighting that bridge and some information about it. Also, as you start to get over here, you get to see the gatehouse and some things like that. So what we might do is like one history sign over here and one over here, right? And then the thing to also consider, though, for the accessible trail, since it is short, 0.4 miles, we need to be considerate of what signage we have on this side, because a person may only be able to experience that which is paved. Now, we can't cluster 4 signs over here, but let's make it worth their while. And you may recall, Will, you were there, and I'm not, Sati, I'll recap for you, but when we did the accessibility, when we did the walk with the ADA consultant, you remember what he said because the paved trail, we are ending it as far as what's accessible at the first very steep slope before it gets to the pumping station up there. And what the ADA consultant said, what you could do here is put a sign showing the view that they can't necessarily see if they're in a wheelchair, for example, and then talk about a little bit about that, and put a bench there and that kind of thing. So that might be one of the signs that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, and I really like that idea because it gave them an option to see where they couldn't see, right? And so so I'm gonna put this at end of accessible trail, right, like at slope, picture of view plus some info there with the bench. Okay. So I think we have some good ideas for potential topics. Now, is there anything that you guys are thinking that you might be thinking about that we don't have here or we haven't talked about yet? Tom had to leave. Boo. Okay, so he's out. So if you can have some ideas maybe pop up as we're planting seeds, so we'll leave some space for that. if it's not coming up now, it may come up in a little, later. So
Yeah, I guess the one other thing that we could mention is just invasive species, right?
that's really good. That could be here. Yep. Importance of native. And where we might be able to do that? We might be able to do that on the other side where we're putting the boardwalk, right? Because I think there's some invasives in there. Or if there's a good spot where we see like, a lot of, what's it called? Oriental bittersweet, maybe taking the trees or something, that might be a good place to highlight. For example, you can see back here, the vines are taking over the trees, and that's what happens. So very good idea, Will.
The other area would be pollinators, right?
Pollinators, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that could tie in nicely. Importance of native species to support pollinators.
Right.
Yep. And yeah. And so some of the topics that came up during the research was, so this is some information on protecting watersheds and stuff. And then this is the building of the dam, right? So they talked about the eminent domain, the impact on the community. What I thought was really interesting too was when they started talking about, so they talk about the monumental engineering feat, and that's important. And here to your point, Will, they note that it was overseen by a few notable engineers and officials. This Frederick Stearns was the chief engineer in the Boston Waterworks. He played a role in that. So that's kind of highlighting some historical figures. But I want to be careful about balancing, highlighting an engineer and also highlighting those immigrants who did the work, right? I want to make sure we're highlighting not just the famous people, but we're highlighting inclusively all of those who did the work. And then down, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we might go kick Ken Burns in the butt and say, look, you should do a series of documentaries on the building of, of America from the standpoint of reservoirs, the electric grid, the, railroads, interstate highway system. I mean, there's a lot of good stories to tell that unfortunately never really get told.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't quite understand, how many people have worked how long to make this into a good place, and to really leverage, the natural beauty, but also the resources and all of that stuff.
Yep. Yes. So here they talk about the immigrants and their craftsmanship and stone masonry work and stuff. It's really interesting.
Right.
But then they also talked a little bit, I'm scrolling faster. So the transformation of the landscape. Now think about, it was all forest and agricultural land. And then they come in, move everything, and animals were displaced, people were displaced. It changed the entire environment, right? It created a new habitat for new animals, but it also displaced others. So there was a real interesting kind of twist there on the loss of the terrestrial habitats, the ecological balance. So it's interesting what happened then and the impacts of it, right? So those are some of the things that we can talk about. Because we think about that sometimes, right? And I want to stay positive and realistic and not too negative on our signs, but at the same time, I don't want to erase history, right? I want to kind of share, because I think those things are interesting to people, right? This is advancement, technological advancement is important for communities, but it has its impacts also, right? Everything does.
Yeah. There was a great video that I found at one point of this guy who was talking about how Massachusetts has gone through different eras. There was, sort of the original farming, and then that kind of gave way to, grazing animals and things like that. And then that kind of, or changed to, there was an area, or there was a time where they were cutting down trees like crazy to build wooden crates. I think for World War II.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. I mean, the state has been made and remade multiple times over the years.
Yes. Yep, I hear you. So, yeah, so I think we have some good content. So next phase on this, and so you started tracking time because this is all time tracked to this
Yes, I am.
project. Okay, right.
So one thing, Kat, I was thinking about the trail markers.
Yep.
So reflective or fluorescent trail markers, if we can have, because that will be useful for even the, though not totally visually impaired, but anybody. I mean, if we have reflective trail markers, we don't
Yep.
have those.
Yes, we definitely have to put the trail markers up. That's a good point. And yeah, and they
Well,
talk
one
about,
other
yep.
one other cheat that I use quite a bit is, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of people with more limited vision probably use. But if I see a sign that I can't necessarily read, I can take a picture of it.
Yep.
And then I can expand the picture. So,
Right. Yeah.
there's, when I ride the train into Boston and I'm looking at that big board, I can't really read that, but I can take a picture and then blow it up and I can then read it.
Yep.
So, the phone actually also is a good compensatory aid.
It is a magnifying glass too, in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also they say, make sure you're using high contrast text against the background so it's easier to read.
Right.
In general. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're in good shape, and our next step for this will be like storyboarding, really putting together the signs, what we think can be the text, some potential pictures and stuff. So again, I'll work with Sati to get that done in the next couple of weeks, so that our next meeting we'll have something to look at. And
Okay.
yep. And so I'll also probably reach out to our sign vendor and say, okay, after your 15 times you followed up with us, maybe that's 30. We're now ready to move forward. And so we can start getting real quotes, and we'll get a better sense of what the design cost is going to be, because we can provide the text, we can provide the pictures, and their designers are going to do the design work for us. So that will be helpful. And we'll see what we can do and what the timeline and turnaround is.
Right.
Okay, great. So, so that I'm going to stop sharing screen. And so that is phase 1. Okay, so phase 2, I have an update on, let me just see how to tell you. So I'll start with the Beals and Thomas meeting recap, and then I'll go into the select board meeting that took place this week. So basically, and we're not tracking this time, Sati. So we met, so when Beals and Thomas completed the wetland delineation, okay, for the trail, and actually, why don't I pull that up so you see it? Because it is good stuff. Oh, that figures. Oh dear. What's his name? Andrew. Oh, there. Good. Okay, let me share screens. Right there. Great. You guys seeing that?
Nope.
I'm seeing Sati. He's lovely.
Oh, here. All right. There we go. Are you seeing this now? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So for orientation, the trail comes out. You see my little cross sign, my mouse. The trail comes off of the reservoir here, right? Goes down, crosses through this little narrow path and goes into the woods here. We put the boardwalk here. We go over the gas line here, and we put the bridge here, right? And we match up with this.
Right.
So you can see that we are going to, this is where they've delineated the wetlands. So the boardwalk and the bridge will both be in the wetlands. We knew that, but now we really know that.
Right.
So one of the questions, this was prepared so that they could go to the Southborough and Framingham Conservation Commission and get the NOI RDA needed for the work here before we can work in here. So one of the questions the wetland expert asked was, can you reroute the trail? Watch my cursor. Instead of going all the way down there through the wetlands, you would come here, stay on the side, walk around here and around here and around here and go this way and put the bridge over here somewhere, right? And so it gets us closer to the MWRA facility, which they don't like. I knew they wouldn't like it, but we wanted to ask anyway because it's going to be what the conservation commissions would ask is, can you reroute the trail outside of the wetlands, right? So we asked MWRA and we shared, we knew that there would be some security issues, but maybe we could put up a fence or something if there was budget, because if we're not doing the boardwalk, we'd have a little extra funding. So we met with MWRA last Friday. It was with Beal and Thomas and MWRA, and we walked this, and
Yes.
it isn't possible. MWRA does not, they don't want, it's drawing too many people back there to their facility. It's not really safe.
Their facility is that building, right, that we see the roof of.
All of this,
Okay,
right.
Right.
So they don't really want people back there, and I don't blame them, right? So we asked the question. We've already had it answered. And so MWA is being really awesome about, they will provide us some parking spots because really we're looking at access. How are we going to get the building supplies in here? How are we going to get the geotechnical guys to do a boring in here, right? And they can't access this way. So MWA.
These are temporary parking spaces.
Yes, temporary, correct.
Right.
So just for the work crew. And so they said that they would allow some parking here. And so the geotechnical has a little ATV, so they could either come in this way to do boring testing, and they can probably, there's a little trail access here. They can park along Thomas Drive and then drive in here and go along trail here to get the borings. So, and then the problem is there's an intermittent stream somewhere in here, right? And so they said basically what we would do is put swamp mats down so the little ATV can go over that. So we have some solutions here on how to access the trail. MWRA was really kind and very open about trying to help us find a solution here of access. So
now it's the green portions are wetland, right?
Yeah, that's right, or wetlands.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that there's wetland on the left side of that access
Here.
road coming off of 30. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually when we were there, we met Eben. He is I forget his title. Actually, it is he's the director of Western Operations. So he noted that these wetlands are actually, how did he describe it? What did he say? Not fabricated, but what did he call it?
Man-made?
Replicated wetlands. They're man-made. Yeah. So
Okay.
in the 1990s, when they put this facility that was constructed in the 90s, they created these wetlands here. They're called replicated wetlands. So not to minimize wetlands, they're still protected under the Wetlands Act, etc. But his point was they're not protecting a special species of some sort here, right? Because it's not.
Right.
So fair enough. And then we did discuss this open space here. If you had to drop off bridge materials or boardwalk materials, this would be fine to do so, and easy access right there. So we're back to keeping the trail where it was, and we've explored it. So now the engineering firm, when they do their application and they're asked about why didn't you, they can say we tried. And also the other concern is if we were to put the bridge way up here, and they were thinking it's only in one town, one jurisdiction, you only have to go to one conservation commission. That does make sense. However, Southborough may have a bit of a problem if we're paying for a bridge that's in Framingham. So although right now, most of the bridge is in Southborough, a sliver is in Framingham, that's okay. But you start putting the whole thing in Framingham, that could be a little bit of an issue. So again, a little bit of a problem that we don't have because we're going to keep it the same. Okay.
Did you discuss the crosswalk in this area?
Oh yeah, I did.
Okay.
So I've got news on that too. So any
right.
questions on the wetland delineation or that part of it?
As far as the bridge building, I mean, putting the bridge where we think we're going to put the bridge now is not going to be a tremendous heartburn, right? Is it?
A heartburn for what? For who?
Well, for, building the supports, the bridge
The
supports
abutment,
and,
the abutment, what are they called?
yeah, whatever. But, and then getting the bridge in and all of that stuff.
Sure, it's
There's
all,
no obstacles have come up on that.
we're gonna learn more as we go along, but we hope not. There could be
Okay.
something or other, but MWRA said they can control the flow of that water. So if, for example, when they're building it, they can keep the water down at a lower level. So doing the abutments, if that's the word, I forget, doing those may be easier for them and they can control it.
The
You broke up a little,
Yeah.
Will.
portion of Framingham,
We didn't hear you.
pardon?
Yeah. You missed some part of your.
The portion of the bridge that might edge into Framingham, okay?
Yeah.
That portion of Framingham is owned by the city, right?
Yes, it's Framingham town. Or
Okay,
yes. So see, this is the line, this line right here. This
right,
red line is the boundary line. So you can see like all of this is Southborough, and like the abutment, the bridge will be on the other side, is slightly in Framingham.
now you and I one evening had gone and cleared some trail. This would be on the eastern side of the bridge, not the western side. And across from some houses and such. That's all Framingham land back in there,
Yeah.
though, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is on Framingham, yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no private ownership there.
not where the trail is, no. And
Okay.
yeah, and we have this all 8M permitted with MWA, so we have a permit to work in here as for trails and stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that. So the next step is Beals and Thomas, they're preparing the NOI. They have to the application, they have to appear in Southborough and Framingham in August. And then they will submit to the state for a permit. Hopefully that goes well, because at the same time, in parallel, they'll be preparing the bid documents, right? And then we'll go to bid. And hopefully that's in September, that's the target. So we've got to keep all eyes and focus on moving forward with that.
As far as Beals and Thomas is concerned, when is winter coming? What is their cutoff date for winter to stop construction or anything?
Oh, we haven't talked about that necessarily yet. We'll talk about that in a little while. Like,
Okay.
as far as the days coming, right, we'll have to know. But when the ground freezes, like that doesn't really freeze anymore much, right?
Yeah.
That's what it said. So, so Any Fence had mentioned that they can do work, and that's just an example of a contractor working outside with the ground. He said we could do work as long as the ground's not frozen. So, yeah, we're gonna wanna figure that out. But as long as like if in the event for example, the bid got out, someone bid on it, we contracted with the firm. I think as long as the money is procured in that PO world, that's where, if it had to go into the next year, we should be fine. But we're not going to entertain that thought yet, because we're finishing this up this year, people, and we have to think that way and make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the next thing is, so crosswalk, yes. So, all right, this is a little bit of a time tracking issue, Shati, because this part of this is about phase 1. So you guys know from our last meeting that we need to pave the ADA parking spots and use that money that we spend on that as match for the grant to finish our match, right? So we
Right.
are fast tracking the paving of those spots. We need engineering services for the paving of those spots. So because we need engineering services, and that was the recommendation of DPW, thank you, Bill Cundiff. So we're getting 3 quotes from Beals, from PAR, and from VHB for the engineering services and the paving, And then I also asked for the crosswalk for a quote, right? And so if we do the two together, the engineering services for both of those together, we can realize savings rather than doing one project at a time. I spoke specifically to VHB, who provided a proposal. I needed it split, and I needed to understand what they were proposing. And he just mentioned that, like, these are small projects, so engineering firms may be pricing them higher to make it worth their while. So I was like,
Right.
is there ever a world where there's an engineering firm that would say, hey, I like trails and I don't want to do that. And I want to just give them a different price because we don't have a lot of money. So anyway, it was just a funny little conversation. So it's just something to consider. So we're waiting on those quotes now.
Now, what
And-
do we expect the total budget to be?
Yep. So far the quotes for the paving engineering is like 6,000 and 8,000 ish, right? So that's about what we're looking for, that just that cost
Right.
to do the engineering for the paving. The paving itself, Bill Cundiff had provided an estimate, but his estimate was based on like 5 spots, and so his estimate was about 21,000. But it may be less than that because we're only doing 2 spots, so I'm not quite, sure yet
And
about the total cost, but we're.
and the crosswalk build is like 10,000.
Well, so originally the very first quote we got was 15,000, right, for that crosswalk, but it depends on a number of factors. One is the positioning of the crosswalk has to be put far enough from the sight line of that curve, the bend in the road, right, to make it safe. So depending on where you put that, you may need also a little bit of a sidewalk to connect to the parking area, because you can't just have a crosswalk that goes into grass, right? You have to have curbing that changes, your curbing changes on both sides to allow a little entryway. And then if you're going into a parking lot, then you have a little sidewalk to enter the parking lot, right? I didn't think about that little sidewalk. So there's some considerations there. The other factor is because this is Mass DOT, so there's a $7,000 access fee just for Mass DOT, to have that access, right? And that's what towns pay to do this. And then the question is, who owns and maintains that crosswalk? That's usually a question of like, there'll be a maintenance agreement. So Beals had said, for example, there was another town that had that, or maybe it was VHB, and they said that the DOT had a maintenance agreement that the town would take care of the maintenance, and because technically it's on DOT land, so they own it, but they don't always maintain with that. It just depends on how this works out. So those are some factors there. Now, so regarding the crosswalk, and this will kind of fast track us into this next conversation, we need to talk to Sanofi, now I'm forgetting how to pronounce that name again, is basically what is there. So they said they will commit to some parking spaces if we put the crosswalk in. We need to get a letter of commitment or an MOA or a memorandum of understanding or something from them with the town that says, hey, you can use number of parking spots for how long, right? 10 years or whatever, we commit to 10 years or commit to some period of time so that it's worth our while to put in a crosswalk, right? So we need a little like assurance there. And so I've got to prepare something for the select board to send to general counsel to ask what he recommends that we ask for.
And we want to make sure that this survives if Sanofi gets sold or something, right?
Well, that's the other thing is like, exactly, like, we have to think about that. So I'm glad you mentioned that because that's going to be a consideration.
I mean, Sanofi's not exactly a household name, so who knows? They probably get bought next week or something.
I thought they were a big pharmaceutical company that had a lot of.
Yeah, big.
Yeah, but they're constantly buying and selling each other.
Okay, so that's good consideration to note down that we'll need, in case it's sold. Yep.
With regards to sight lines, would there be like flashing lights?
Yeah, so that's the other thing I asked.
Further down the street or further up the road or whatever?
Yeah. So I asked, so when you put in flashing beacons, you start to get up there to the $45,000 range.
Right.
So we have to consider, and I talked to VHB about who makes the rules, like, and basically the engineering firm will make a recommendation based on the position of the crosswalk, right? So, and so it's not Mass DOT that requires, or, it's kind of like a recommendation based on the spot. So the thing is, I was thinking, we have to balance safety and cost. So that's our objective, and whatever our budget is going to help determine what we can put in there. I don't know that we're going to be able to afford a flashing beacon, even though that might be warranted for that spot because it is a fast moving cars and such. But I do want to bring our attention to on Route 30 on the west side of town heading towards 495 where the trail crosses Route 30. It's like that Lynbrook area and Old Northborough Road, or it connects like that. There is a crosswalk there, and it's not a flashing beacon. It's literally just stripes, and the guardrails are cut, but there's stripes, and that's a 50+ mile an hour section of road, right?
Yeah,
So
but that the sight lines there is really
they're
long
very
and
clear.
straight. Yeah.
Very good point. Yep. So these are some considerations that, you know, we need to have in mind. So we want the crosswalk to happen, but we have to move pretty quickly because, again, if this isn't going to happen, there's $15,000 in that ARPA bucket for that crosswalk that we'll need to get back, or, you know, if we can't use it.
Now, do we have to mush all these things together so that we are clearly over the $50,000 mark?
You mean for the going?
Are we going to have to go to the formal competitive bid process
No,
again?
that's what we're trying to avoid, Will. Yeah,
Okay,
trying to
good.
avoid that, because that's why if we have to do the flash and beacon, I'm not sure we're gonna have the money, but two, it gets up into the bid zone.
Yeah, it
So,
does.
I mean, it's not the end of the world if we have to go to bid for that, but you know, at the same time, as
Well,
long as we were able to do that this year. And
I mean, the good news is that, you know, flashing beacons and crosswalks are, you know, a much more of a commodity kind of thing than the bridge we were trying to bid.
Yeah. So then that brings us back to money. So last week, and anytime we spend ARPA money, we have to ask the select board, can we spend the money you approved for us in this way? So I asked Mark if we could be on the agenda. They gratefully put us, we were grateful that they put us on this Tuesday. So I met with them, is it Tuesday night? And so basically
you were there after I was there.
yeah, you didn't even say hi to me.
Well,
and or stick around. I know you probably have to go.
If you're standing more than 6 feet away from me, I can't recognize who the hell you
Shame
are. Sorry
on
about that.
me. You are right. I
Just
did
the
not come over
reality.
and hug you in front of the select board. Okay.
After I was so impressive, I think I said yes at one point in the meeting.
I hear you. Okay, so let me see where because I want to show you what I presented them. I don't even know what I did.
It's fine.
Where would I have put it? Probably in budget. Sometimes I organize myself out of knowing where things are because I'm so granular in my that I just don't know. Oh, goody.
Oh, speaking of granular, how's your knee, by the way?
It's getting better. Yeah, so hiking small mountains, just trying to do a little bit more each week and month. So thank you for asking. It's getting there.
Okay. Well, I hurt my knee today, so I'm feeling sympathy for you.
Ice that thing, elevate it. Okay, do you guys see the memo I have up?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so this is the memo I shared with them, and this is our funding request. They wanted to understand, well, we were asking to spend, we have 3 ARPA buckets, so I was asking to spend the rest of the money in this way, and then I gave them an update on the project's status of phase 2. So these are estimates, and so I'm going to walk us through it. Basically, the first request is, so we have a $144K bucket. The first request would come out of that. So it's engineering services to pave the 80 parking spots, roughly 6,000. It's an estimate. We're waiting on quotes. Paving, striping, signage, 21. That was our DPW quote. So a total of 27, and I've asked for 35, just for those unknowns that happen in every part of our project. And the schedule is to do it ASAP. And remember, this money will be put towards the Mass Trails grant to help with the match, right? So this is ASAP. So we're hoping to do that as soon as possible. Okay. The next one is the crosswalk at Route 30 in Stony Brook. So estimate was 15. We're going to get new quotes. And so I'm asking for up to 45,000, right? And so that gives us some buffer to spend what we need to make that happen. And then the next one is, so that had its own ARPA bucket of 15. And what we would be doing is the overflow any remaining from the 144 bucket would make up the difference here, right? And then trail enhancements, we had 12.5 in that bucket. We bought our shed and some tools from that bucket. We have 7,056 left. So I've proposed we buy bog bridge materials, small, wood for small boardwalks, shelving for the tool shed, benches, signage for the other trails, and we should purchase these supplies by 8/15 so that the money is expended and we can figure out how to put it all together when we need to. Okay.
Sounds good. But
Any questions?
I mean, we're going to purchase. I mean, when you say purchase by 8/15, is that someone with a credit card going to Home Depot?
Yes, or we may, so every time I make a purchase and get reimbursed, I lose money on taxes because the town is a tax exempt town. So
Right.
if we can go through facilities and they can use their credit card and, then they can use their tax exempt certificate and they can save that money. So we might, if we are organized and get enough time ahead of time to get them to help us without it being an emergency, then I would recommend we leverage that because the taxes aren't that much on a one-off basis. But if I were to add up all the taxes I've paid on behalf of trails, it adds up to a
Or we can go during the tax-free weekend.
tax-free weekend.
That's a very good point.
Wait, that is a great point. When is that? You're in charge.
Sometime in August.
You gotta find out. You're in
I'll
charge.
find out.
All right, 'cause that's what we'll
I'm
do.
not sure it's before August 15th, but no, that's a very good
Well,
point.
it's usually around, I think it's like the 16th or 17th or something like that. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
a
that's good.
idea, Sachi. Okay, I like
That's
it.
a great idea.
Make it simple. So yeah. So that's that. And then, so what the select board did was they just went ahead and approved all the funds can be spent by the Trails Committee now, right? So that's great. So we don't have to keep going back every time we need a little something, 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 because they understand time is of the essence as well. So that was great. Kathy Cook made that recommendation. I was grateful for it. So now we're in the clear. We can spend our money as we need to within reason and within guidelines, of course. So that's that. Along the lines of funding, I wanted to share with you the way we spent the remaining of our Trails Committee budget from fiscal year 24. Okay, so we had about 1325 left in the budget. So we contacted J&J, and the trees that were down, there were about 4 or 5 trees that were down on Partridge Hill, off of Partridge Hill. So they came and they chainsawed those and removed them. And that trail was very filled with poison ivy. So while they were sawing, I took the weed hook or the weed whip and I whipped all the poison ivy, just cleared it and made it a wider path so it's more passable.
This is the trail that goes past the fishing spot,
That
right?
you
The
took
fishing
pictures
rod.
of. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
So they actually got all the different trees. That's great.
Yeah, they got them all. And maybe not the leaner, the leaning one, the leaning tower of Pisa is still there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then because there was time, I was like, well, can you go to Deerfoot? And we've done that, Sati and Will, you and I have all been out there with, because it gets really grown up, those 2 trails that come off on the opposite side of the open channel across from the Burnett Mansion. So they went in and cleared all that out and mowed that section. So that's all done.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was 700 for the trees and the trail work. So that was a good use of those funds. And then the couple of remaining, a couple hundred. So what I went ahead and did was, as part of our tool purchasing thing that we wanted to do, we had a gorilla cart and some extra batteries we needed for the rechargeables. So I purchased the gorilla cart for like a couple hundred and the extra batteries from works.com. And
Right.
The gorilla cart can carry a capacity of 1,200 pounds. So guess what? That can help us carry into the woods. That's going to
bench.
Yeah. So that will help us do that. And
Tell
then
me one thing though. You got an excellent per tree rate.
Don't you bring that up. I know exactly what you're going to say. And I can tell you exactly why that happened. And we can talk about that later. I know exactly what you mean. Because I said the same thing, Will. From last year, you mean?
Yeah.
Yep. Don't go any further. Okay. Yep. I get you. Yeah. So we should talk about that strategy on what it costs for a tree to get chopped and what our expectations are, and align them with J&J, and make sure we had kind of have an understanding of our price list so that we all go into it knowing exactly what we're going to come out with.
Yeah, but that's just a distinctly lower cost.
Yep. So I'll talk to you about why I think that kind of came about. Yeah.
Well, I
so-
mean, last year we were,
Mhm.
we were doing this on an emergency basis. So
It was in the last moments. Yeah. So
yeah.
So, and I had a good conversation with them. I talked to MWA about mowing the open channel
Yes.
off of Ward Road. So just so we remind ourselves, DPW holds the contract for mowing. The contract in the words say you mow to Westboro. So that's already included in the contract for them. So I talked to MWA about gate access. So we need to coordinate with MWA every time J&J, they might be able to put another lock on because they do this daisy chain of locks for all the organizations that need access. So it might just be that J&J gets their own lock and they get to unlock the gates as they need, and they'll have a key. So what we need to do is coordinate with J&J and MWA, and just so MWA gave me a quick heads up on when they mow. I don't have my notes in front of me about when they mow, and so we'll be able to mow around them.
I like the daisy chain of lock idea. That's great.
Yeah, I was like, well, have you ever thought of one lock and many keys?
Well, but that's well,
it's a little
actually,
less
then
secure.
you can essentially cut somebody out of the loop, or you can add more people into the loop without having to worry. And also, whose lock has been unlocked, right?
Yeah. Yep, it's true. So any questions on budget and that kind of stuff? So we have the cart we'll have to put together, and the shelving we'll need to buy. We'll probably have to have a little work party to do some of this, like organize the shed party, and then go from there.
How is our shed holding up? It's not sinking or anything, is it?
I haven't visited the shed in a while. I'll go visit it soon and let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, because it might be on a work day, party that we all go visit the shed. Okay, so moving along quickly, just so you know, okay, we're gonna skip bench selection for this topic. I want to go to yoga on the trail. So we opened up our yoga on the trail series. Last Sunday was the first yoga session. And so there's a series, I think it goes through September. I think we held off on going into October until we know. Let me just see. She said, let me just see if she had any feedback. Yeah, something went awry with there's only 6 people registered. I'm telling the people who messaged come anyway. Okay, so there might have been a little thing with the registration, but so that's live, and basically I can show you here. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Do you see yoga?
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay, good. Yeah, so this is basically join the wait list. Oh no. Oh, I see. Okay, well, yeah, there's something there. I think what happened is the ticket limit. So what we did basically was we had tickets for each. They're not sold out. Okay, yeah, something, I gotta fix that. Anyway, so it's yoga on the trails, blah, blah, blah. It's at the same location, which is off of Parkerville. It's a good location. And so she had at least 6 or so, I think, on this is a picture of them last year. This is an example of where it is. This is the Sudbury Reserve Trail, and this is where it is. So yeah, so I hope that's going to be successful this year if I could fix the registration stuff, which I'll do next. Any questions on that? Okay. Volunteer, we still have to recruit for volunteers. So if you just know anybody and want to casually say something, you can. I can put it on Facebook.
You mean volunteer for
trails?
To become part of the trails community, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so we'll take up the work plan next time because Tom is handling that. And then any other business that I haven't spoken about that we need to.
No?
All right, so let's talk about next meeting. And we'll give it a couple weeks so that we have time to put together some sign stuff. So today's the 18th. How about Thursday the 1st?
That's fine.
Thursday the first.
Or for you, Sophie?
It's okay.
You say okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Right, so let's do that, and then we'll have
First.
okay, great. We'll have I'll set up the meeting information. So yeah, good stuff. I think the signs, I'm excited about the progress we're going to be making, and the opportunity we have to really do some nice accessible features that will be beneficial. We'll have to get a little creative in how we execute this, but I think we have the right people on the team.
So, we're looking for, I guess, a completion date when, like mid next year or?
For what? No, the end of this year. No. Yeah.
No, for this Reservoir Trail,
This year. Yeah, what's wrong with you?
including the signage and everything?
Yeah, no, the sign has to be done by the end of the year or we're in trouble with the grant. Yeah.
Well, then, I guess one thing we might want to add to our list is just some type of grand opening gathering on a Saturday or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And, and I'm sure a lot of people will probably come.
Oh yeah, we'll have a ribbon cutting for sure.
Okay.
We'll invite the senators and we'll invite all the people that helped us get where we are, and we'll say thank you, big time thank you.
Right.
We might wait, like if it opens up, if we get all the work done this year, then we wait till the spring when it's nice and pretty and stuff, do something.
Right.
We could have a soft opening and a big opening, that kind of thing.
Right.
Okie dokie. All right, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
Great. So let's do roll call. Satya Sharma,
Yes.
Will Warren,
Yes, I'm voting yes at 9:04.
Pat McKee. Great. We adjourn at 9:04. Thank you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you all, and we'll be in touch, Satya.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night.